Hi, this is Karen Toavs. I'm bringing you another video. Today, what I want to visit with you about is how do we bridge the literacy strategies that you've been working on for writing a paragraph, a structured, isolated paragraph. How can we use that model to help us become better researchers? So in the field of research, especially when you're doing natural resources research, there's lots of different places where we collect data. So obviously we go into the natural world and we collect data from whatever sources we can. Often that kind of data ends up being quantitative. We can also collect a lot of qualitative data. And so one source of our qualitative data has to do with the expertise in our local communities. And so that expertise comes from elders in the community who may know more about the cultural heritage or the traditions that aren't as vibrant as they were when they were younger. And so part of our goal of being a researcher is, can we preserve some of that cultural knowledge and present it in line with the natural resources work that we're doing in order to help preserve and maintain our cultural heritage along with natural resources management. So I'm going to show you kind of an example topic of a type of research you could conduct. So in this case, you would want to be ready to collect some stories from elders. So we're looking at cultural storytelling and knowledge gathering as the source of data for our research. So one of the ways that we learn about how natural resources have been impacted is understanding what have natural resources looked alike across time. And so for the practice, what I am proposing is that you interview a tribal elder or family member who you know has knowledge of plants in the natural area, and that you know that knowledge could help add to our understanding of how those are used as resources. So one of the things that you want to do to begin with is think about, as you collect data, you need an output, a way to share your data. And with cultural storytelling, that tends a lot of times to be written text. So the written text format that you know is this format right here that comes from an 11-sentence structured paragraph. And so we're going to model the type of questioning that we'll do for our storytelling so that it matches the same paragraph model. So we start with a red idea. And in this case, we have a red idea. It is what familiar plants are valued by our culture. And so you're going to ask an elder to share some of what their knowledge on those plants. Now, if you consider the layout of this, you'll notice that we automatically have our 3 blues again. So you may even want to narrow that question by asking, are there 3 plants you know that have had an important impact on our culture? And then let elders guide you through those things. There are a couple of different ways to collect this type of data. We're not actually going to use this data for any research study. So we're not worrying about an IRB approval. It's very informal. It's for you to practice data collection. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you ask the person that you are interviewing if it's okay for you to ask them questions. If you choose to record that interview, you also have to get permission for that. Written permission is best, so make sure that you get permission if you're asking them to share. The next way that you can do this is by shorthand kind of data collection in the field. So I'm going to show you how we change this web into just a single note card of information. And the main reason that you would want to do that is that when you visit with community members, often they tend to get very shy. And if you are sitting in front of them with a row of questions and you keep writing as they're talking, they're not going to be courageous enough to tell you everything that they know. And so your job in this situation is to be the story listener. You're collecting the information by listening. If you are used to cultural stories being shared this way, you may be comfortable just listening to the elder talk about the plants that they're going to share and then working on a web later. I'm going to show you how to do a shorthand data collection for a web, just using a note card so that you're not terribly obtrusive as you're listening to the story. So I'm going to use the back of the note card for this. And I want the layout of the note card to mimic the layout of the web. So I'm going to segment a section off at the top. That'll be my red idea. And I know I already have a red idea. I typically don't allow questions to become red ideas once you write the paper. But in this point, you're a data collection person. So you're going to pose a question to try and collect information from the elder that you're visiting with. So my question is going to be, what plants are valued by our culture? So this would be the question that I would pose. as if I were going to interview an elder or community member. Then I'm going to have a section for the blue topics, and keep in mind that you can pre-suggest that you want 3 plants. You can let the elder talk and just see where it winds you. You might need to have a couple extra note cards if you're doing that. So I have 3 sections here for my 3 blue ideas, which in this format are going to be the 3 plants that they mention. And then as they talk, I'm going to collect some details. Keep in mind that it's very important that you try and keep your notes as short as you can, because you want to be an active listener. So occasionally you're going to turn to your note card and write down a word. In between that, you're going to be giving as much attention to the storyteller as you can so that they know you're an active audience. So if this was the start of my web, I would be listening to stories of native plants, and you could also take that elder out and go visit and find the plants if the weather is accommodating and you have a location to do that. So I'm going to start with 3 possible plants that you could be introduced to. So one of those that's fairly common is purple coneflower. So I would write that down in this box. And as I listen to descriptions about purple coneflower, I would just write shorthand, what am I being told that purple coneflower was important for? And you may have to ask some prompter questions to find out as you're listening, what did we use it for? So one thing that purple coneflower was used for was to make tea. And that tea tended to be to treat illness. So I could write that down. Another thing that purple coneflower is used for was the roots were used for teeth cleaning. So I could write that down as an idea. Keep in mind, I'm keeping it very shorthand. You don't want to be writing a lot while you're listening to stories. So another plant that could be valued would be chokecherry. And chokecherry, of course, has lots of uses. One of those uses was to treat sore throats, so I would write that down. Another use was to use the bark for wounds. So for treating infection and wounds. So I'm going to leave that. And then I'm waiting to hear about a 3rd plant. And again, if an elder shares more plants than that, you can certainly remember, flip the card over. You have the general layout figured out, so do as much shorthand as you need to collect that information. A 3rd plant that we're going to talk about is rubber rabbit brush, because it grows everywhere. And rubber rabbit brush had quite a few different uses, but one that is notable is that it helped prevent erosion. So we get a different aspect of management if we think about a plant being used for management of the landscape. And then it was also used in yellow dye. So I'm going to write those down as my ideas. Keeping in mind, I'm writing as short as I can, and I'm listening to the elder speak as much as I can. And then when they are finished, these are all the notes that I have. I've just written down a spastic word here or there as they're talking. Then later, you're ready to transform this into a paragraph, exactly like the paragraphs that we've been working on. So typically when you're trying to collect cultural storytelling information, data from community members, from family members, from elders, each section of the story that they're telling could end up being a structured paragraph following this mode. So one of the changes that I would have to make as I get ready to write this is I'm going to change my red idea from a question into a statement. And so my statement could be something like, there are many plants valued by our culture. First, purple coneflower grows all over the hills. This has been used to treat illness by making tea. The roots of purple coneflower have also been used for teeth cleaning. Next, chokecherry grows along the edges of river bottoms. Chokecherry was used to soothe sore throats. The bark of the tree is also used to treat wounds. Finally, rubber rabbit brush is found all over the hillside. This was an important plant to prevent wind erosion. It was also used to build yellow dyes. These are 3 plants that have had significant value for our culture. So you've managed to collect the information from an elder, you found a way to preserve it, and the other thing that this does is it keeps data collection very similar. So if we had a group of you going out to collect stories from elders, then all of your information would be structured the same when we come back to write it for our paragraphs. And that kind of similarity and structure is really important when you're building academic knowledge base. So this is an example of how to web out a topic when you're also trying to embed cultural storytelling and connecting to the knowledge in your own community base. So thank you for joining, and I hope that you found this video helpful.